So in this episode, I speak with Darcy Coss. Darcy has dealt with a situation that's all too common, chronic back pain, which also included sciatica. And he talks about his journey all through this, from being an ex-athlete to now getting over this condition and actually helping other people get over their chronic back pain as well. Right, Darcy, thanks very much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely, brother. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. I've had a couple of guests on previous with back issues and so on. I know you do a lot of work around that. So, what I wanted to do firstly, I wanted to go back to kind of the beginning really and talk about your battle, your own personal battle with chronic back pain.
hmm Yeah, man, it feels like such a long time ago. It really isn't. I'm 42 now.
hmm
And when my first back pain moment, had to have been in my early 20s. I played basketball out here in Canada, college basketball as well, high school, all that stuff. And I remember the play very specifically, just like, a low bounce pass, and I went down to, try to deflect the ball, and then like my back just gave out and I was crawling around. And for about 2 days, I was literally crawling around, like eating from the floor and stuff. And then that kind of stuff took place throughout my adult life in playing college basketball. And I would just throw my back out every once in a while, once a year, twice a year type thing. And it'd be, 2, 3 days, but then you'd just be back to normal, no problems. And when I was playing college basketball, I needed quite a bit of work on my body just to be able to play. Had some hip injuries, groin injuries, and I had to work with a therapist for about 20, 30 minutes before and after each game in practice. And so the journey for me was one of like a lot of maintenance, being resilient, being strong, the body kind of covering up and managing. But when I was 35, I had sciatica, and I had never had that before. Same kind of deal, felt a little twinge. Oh no, hurt the back a little bit again. And then next day it was that was the start of, I guess why I'm here right now is electric jolts, crazy stuff like that. And it just led me down this path from that point of kind of going through the whole rigmarole of trying to figure this out. So
Yeah, going back to when obviously this happened and you played basketball a lot, it must have affected you mentally as well, being able to going from kind of playing basketball when you want to do what you want, and then you couldn't really, be part of that sport as much as what you want to be.
yeah, it really was, because at the time, like by this point, I wasn't when I got the sciatica specifically, I wasn't playing competitively, but I was still very active. I had just finished playing some semi-professional stuff, traveling the world, and at the time, more than anything, basketball was one thing that was taken away. But when we're talking about sciatica to this level, and anyone who's experienced it, it's far beyond just like, oh, I can't play the sport. That's one part of it, but you just want to be able to just walk normally, right?
Yeah.
It's far beyond that at that point, at least.
Yeah, definitely. When you think about the big things, don't you? But it's the day-to-day stuff that people don't see,
Yeah,
or the
yeah.
basic stuff.
Well, it's exactly it. You take it for granted, right? And it's very human. It's natural, right? This is what we do as humans. We take things for granted, and that's why you hear people saying practice gratitude. You'll feel more content, because you'll be grateful for the things you do have because you're acknowledging them. And sometimes it takes us to actually have a serious thing happen to us before we say, oh, you know what? It's so important for me just to be able to walk normally, to be able to get in and out of a car, right?
Yeah.
To even go for a long walk or sit with my friends without being in pain, or even just sleep in a bed, which was my one of my issues. I couldn't sleep in a bed. I had to sleep on the floor. So
What was it about the next steps and in terms of the frustration around the kind of, traditional recovery system? Where did that frustration come from?
yeah, I mean, there was initially, there's no frustration, because that's, you for as long as most people are around, like, you trust your medical professionals. And some of my closest friends are medical professionals, physiotherapists and otherwise, right? So for me, I did get a level of frustration, and I did turn directly to that system. I got MRIs done, saw an orthopedic surgeon who, did the test, did the MRIs. And at that point, it was really, hey, you know what? Here's the anti-inflammatories. Start taking those just so you can get some comfort in your life, which
Mhm.
I gladly did at the time. I was like, I will take those. And when I got the MRI, I thought, okay, I'm going to get the answers. And I got the MRI, looked over it with it wasn't the doctor, but it was like the assistant, and he kind of went over some stuff. And I said, okay, well, what's the next step? Like, what do I need to do to get better? So, you do some physio, and they said, okay, that's great. And if that doesn't work, and they say, okay, well, if that doesn't work, like there's other things you can do, like injections, so that we can put some injections in there. And I said, okay, and that's great. But keep in mind that I understand that like taking medications at this, even back then, I understood that these are not fixing the problem, right? It's fixing my pain. And so I said, well, what happens if that doesn't fix it? And then he said, well, then you'd be a candidate for surgery at that point, right? And then you can
Mhm.
consider that. And then I said, okay, that's great. And then, me being the curious person I am, come to find out that not all surgeries remove pain.
Yeah.
So it's this whole thing. And I remember this very vividly because I left there and I said, well, I'm not doing that. Like, at least if I am going to go down that route of getting injections in my back, I'm literally going to try everything else I can to at least get down to the point of like fixing the problem, because I knew deep down that there was an issue that was causing this, because I had all these other things leading up to it throughout my entire playing career and my life before this. So there was a frustration there, but it was more so of a dead end, like, okay,
Yeah.
well, unless I want to walk that path, then I could have kept going and maybe there wouldn't have been frustration, but I decided not to. So I was more so on my own, searching the internet for answers.
Yeah, that's it. So there was a point in time when there was a shift in your mindset of, okay, I'm going to take a bit of ownership of this myself, and that's something I can relate to. I think I've been on a similar journey in that sense where you'd have the traditional way of doing it, which is absolutely fine. But I think you might look at a different option yourself, and you have a little moment and a shift, and you go, okay, what else can I do? What else can I look at? And you do tend to start looking at the internet and trying to figure stuff out. And I think the next point is really just experimental and a lot of trial and error. Um, so when it came to that early experiment and time and that side of it, what was some of the things that you started to do to kind of help yourself?
Yeah, so what did I do? Like, so, I had at the time naproxen, so I took that, and that actually did take some of the initial inflammation, the edge off, which I was very grateful for. So I have nothing against these medications. But then again, like I couldn't sleep. Like, it was disaster sleeping. So this is where I started to sleep on the floor.
Okay.
That was a game changer. And to this day, I still sleep now on like very hard surfaces, and it's just so much better. I just, you get used to it. But that was one big thing that allowed me to at least start to sleep through the night. I had to sleep in these crazy funky positions. And these are all things that, I found on YouTube. I call
Yeah.
it YouTube University. So I found these things, and they were, some were helpful and some aren't. You get caught in the do these stretches and do these things, and I tested everything out. Another thing that I did as well, I'm in Canada, and I started taking CBD.
Mhm.
So that was a big game changer for me as well. It was just like it functions similar to like some of those other drugs, like the gabapentins and the things that like will like calm your nervous system down from like overreacting. And but when you have sciatica, you literally have something that's overstimulating the nerve, and so you want to calm down a little bit. So that was big in just helping me get through the day. And then I really committed to a morning routine that was centered around getting up, walking, moving my body. And those are the early stages of it. I still remember like very, very vividly, like lying on the ground, YouTube, sleeping on the floor, trying to make beds on the floor. At the time I was traveling, I was working a job. And, I remember one time being in China, and, they put me up in this like super fancy hotel. And like, and this was not the only place, multiple hotels, but I remember this one very specifically, and just, okay, where am I going to make the bed? It's on the floor,
Yeah.
I'd ask extra like comforters and pillows and stuff. But that was my life, for a good little bit. Um, and obviously that was just like the early stages of like what I started to do to just just to try to take control of what was going on.
And how did it start to develop into the way that you changed like your movement patterns? And when it came to your, physical training, what kind of things did you start to bring into play?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of mentioned the morning routine. So like a common one, and this is all very common back pain stuff, but you see stuff on the internet, very, very simple stuff, just glute activation, getting blood to that area without irritating. So I do a lot of like, glute bridges and isometric glute bridges and things of that nature in the early stages. But the biggest thing was like the mindset around moving, right? And starting to do that as a habit, right? Which seems insane because it doesn't take you to the point of like thinking, okay, I can't move now, so now I want to move. You know what I mean? That's like the taking it for granted thing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like that's something that's still to this day, it's part of a standby morning routine. I wake up in the morning, drink some water, meditate, get up and go for a walk straight away, right? And these are things that I do now because of what took place way back then. So those are like those early things. But then if we fast forward a little bit, I've always been a high performing athlete, right? So
Mhm.
the athletic mindset, and the performance mindset is one of pushing your body, right? Whether it be for strength, for speed, right? For running distance, or adding size, muscle, etc.
Yeah.
And that's always been my focal point because I'm an athlete, right? And that's typically how most people approach most training. Um, so it wasn't until a few years later that after like stopping kind of everything and letting my body completely, well, not completely recover, but get to the point where I wasn't suffering anymore.
Yeah.
I was able to work with someone who changed my perspective on what training was, and not necessarily like move this way, although there was a lot of that. The biggest takeaway was more so the intention and the focus on what you bring to your training. And so to summarize it in the easiest way is like you can train like vertically, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. How fast, how strong, how quickly can I achieve those things? And then you can also train like horizontally. So how long can I do something for? So one is more of like the lifespan, health span version, and one is more the performance version. And
Mhm.
so I had to shift my mindset to this one, asking myself, how long do I want to be able to do these things? And the moment you ask yourself that and I started to, that's when everything started to shift. And then I was able to accept some of the other training modalities that I wasn't doing before that focused on mobility and full range of motion, focused on recovery, right? Actually prioritizing those things that would allow me to actually do it for the long period of time.
Yeah, completely understand. When it comes to recovery, I know that's quite a big one. What kind of steps do you take for you personally for your own recovery?
Yeah, recovery is big. I mean, I think I focus on recovery more now than I do than the actual training. It was just
Yeah.
wild. Like without getting into the details of like what I do because that'll vary, but it really just comes down to listening to your body. And it's something that when I work with people all the time, it's like you need to listen to your body. So an example would be like, say you're following some training protocol and it's like, hey, I train 4 days a week and on Monday I do this, Tuesday I do this. So you do your Monday and Tuesday workout, and then Wednesday's workouts there. You're feeling a little bit tired and you're feeling a little bit sore. You're also a little bit groggy and out of it. And, traditional thing would say you got to get it done, right? Get the workout done. But what the thing that they're missing there is that you may not have to do that workout. Rather, just move, right? So what that could look like is, hey, I'm just going to go for a longer 30-minute walk outside, maybe a 40-minute walk, right? Instead of doing, maybe if you have this strength training workout done, or if you're a runner, you have this longer run, you don't even do that activity, right? Do a different activity that's going to stimulate your body in a different way, right? So a classic example of something I might do is if I'm feeling really tired or really exhausted, I'm just going to do a sauna session and I'm just going to do some light mobility drills. I'm going to get my heart rate up with the sauna, spend 20 minutes in there, get the blood flow going, which is going to be all positive, all recovery. Then I might do some mobility, right? Probably before and then do this on after. Another thing is like, if I'm feeling like, okay, like I want to train that day, instead of doing, what I had planned, maybe I'm just going to go push the sled, do some pushing and pulling of the sled, a little bit of crawling, and some mobility, and then jump in the sauna. So the point is it can be a long walk. It can be some light mobility. The point is not to abandon everything. It's just to listen to your body. And I think people get connected to the script, right? Like, okay, this is my training protocol. I have to do the training protocol. And then what happens is they're not focusing on the recovery, and the recovery comes from listening to yourself, not because on day 3 you're supposed to rest. And so that's the mindset that I shifted away from, and that's how it looks from a procedural standpoint for me, is checking in and listening. And just as an aside to that, a big part of that whole thing is, I kind of threw in that I meditate. That's a huge part of it, because if you can't even you realize that you're lost in thought or thinking about all this stuff or worrying about things, it is much harder with everything that's going on to slow down and even think like, oh, how do I actually feel? And so that's been a big thing for me as well, as far as my actual rehab and how I approach that day to day and week to week.
Yeah, definitely. I think the mental health aspect's massive, and that's one point that I will get onto for definite. Something I'm interested in because I know my mindset and my own mental health is so much different now compared to what it was, going on 3 years ago. And I think you go through a whole, I think you almost have to go through a roller coaster of emotions to eventually get to this point and kind of what you said before,
Yeah.
acceptance. So when you've obviously now kind of experimented yourself, you've had that shift, you've worked with a coach yourself, and you've got this new kind of, way of thinking, way of doing things, kind of a longevity. How did that then turn into the fact that you was like, okay, I can now do this for myself. I want to help other people.
Yeah, yeah. That's, as what's crazy is like I've been a coach, a mentor. So, after I finished playing basketball, I started coaching really seriously, coaching college basketball and these club teams. And so I was heavily involved in coaching. So I guess I've always been somewhat of a mentor or a guide or a coach, literally. And once I worked with my coach and I saw what he was doing, this was, before this I was doing coaching and I was in the event space.
Mhm.
Now, as we all know, in 2019, that all stopped for there was no events, pandemic and all that. And I
Yeah.
had a lot of time to reflect. And this is when I actually worked with my coach. I had all this free time. It was great. So when I leaned into meditation and all this and all these things. But I was dying to work, and I worked with him for like probably a year and a half. And at some point I remember I'm like, I want to do this. Like I want to do this. And so I was grateful that he was able to train me on his methods and teach me and kind of give me that first little push. And from there I took it forward. But that's I was already someone who looked to help and guide. But when
Yeah.
when you go through something like that, you're like, oh, I know so many people are suffering through this, and we do it in silence for the most part. And so I said, well, let me try to help people like that. And it's pretty cool to be sitting here with you now. I mean, I've been doing this for over 3.5 years now,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So that's the short version of how it kind of led me to it. I was already a coach, and I just said I want to help people with
It
this.
was
And
just a very
pandemic
natural.
presented that opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't doing what I was doing before. And I said, well, let me try something new.
How does it feel for you now, in terms of that mental aspect? Because you did mention then, obviously, we do suffer in silence a lot of the time, and especially
Mm-hmm.
with a condition that people don't necessarily see because, to look at you, obviously, athletic background and everything, you'd be like, okay, that person's absolutely fine, but they don't know what the day to day is. In terms of your mental health now, compared to what it was when it was at its worst, how are you coping with everything now?
Yeah, I mean, now, I mean, it's just like normal everyday human stuff, right? The normal
Yeah.
worries and stuff like that. Obviously, it's been a long journey with me on the meditation front. Like I've done 10-day silent retreats and things of that nature, and I've been meditating for a long time now. So, it's a work in progress. Like that never stops. That's something that you do for the rest of your life. It's no fix or anything, but it does really help ground me. And, it allows me to get out of my thoughts. And when I was going through all of this, it was just every single day worrying, wondering. Um, at one point I put on my cell phone screen, and this is when I was starting to feel better, but I literally wrote the message. And it's funny because I actually still do this to this day. Like on my computer screen and phones, I like, well, whatever I'm focusing on, I'll put it on the background of that. So I'm constantly seeing it. But I put never take your health for granted.
Yeah.
And that was a reminder to me to like, you get up and go on these morning walks. You know what I mean? You listen to your damn body. Like you don't want this to happen again. And you have to be so grateful because at the time when I was struggling, yeah, mentally, it was a nightmare. Like it's just
Yeah.
overwhelming. And then there's just a level of what if, what if, and it's not what if good, it's like what if bad, what if I need surgery, what if the sensations in my leg never come back, what if I
Yeah.
can never run or jump or do things, and again, like you said, I'm a big guy, like I'm in like about 193 centimeters, 6'4" in feet,
Yeah.
200 pounds, like I'm a big guy, and so people look at you and like so you look good, so you must be fine, you look fine, right? And that's the thing about back pain, so there's a disconnect between what people see and how you feel, and then that can be a little bit disturbing, and then you kind of like step away, you stop seeing your friends because you're in pain, and it really spirals, and you end up really going through it alone. So those times were very, very tough, but now, yeah, like I mean, I'm just grateful now. There's just a level of being grateful. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing you mentioned then was about being alone. So I want to try and take a little bit of advice from you really for people at this stage now, just towards the back end of this now. So I want to ask really what very basic level of advice would you give somebody that is suffering right now from that, could be sciatica, could be that chronic back pain that just doesn't seem to ever, they might think it's never going to go away. What's that basic level
Hmm.
of advice that you give to them first?
You know what? This is a perfect thing. So like I've put together um like basic steps on this, and because I've thought about this for a long time, and you get this, hey, what should I do, all this advice, so I'm just going to list out my 12 steps, and I'll obviously I'm not going to go into all the detail, but
No,
the
yeah.
first step is just admitting that chronic pain is taking over your life. That's step one, because a lot of times we sit in like denial, like, oh no, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And as a result of that, we're not in alignment to the reality, right? So we're worrying about something or stressing or sad or whatever it is because we don't have the thing that we used to have. So it's through acceptance that you can say, okay, this is where I'm at,
Mhm.
right? And then you can say, okay, step two is believing in the possibility of actually healing. You accept it, and then you say, okay, I can heal. And then you have to say, well, what things do I need to do that are going to allow me to get to where I want to go? And so step three is just finding a new approach, right? You've been doing things this way. How can I change things so that I can do them a different way that are going to get me different results? So step four is you take inventory on what's actually feeding your pain. Write it down. Find out, right? Is it the way you're sleeping? It's what you're doing. Is it your stress levels? Is it the working out you're doing? Are you pushing through pain? There's a huge list of things, right? So
Yeah.
once you figure that out, now you say, okay, well, what can I do to eliminate the things that are potentially causing the pain,
Yeah.
right? What can I do to improve my situation? 5%, 10%, 20%. So step five is eliminating the pain triggers. And then step six is replacing those habits with pain-free habits, right? So if before you were like running and you're like, hey, that's been causing my pain. Well, maybe you don't want to run. Maybe you want to walk, or maybe you want to swim, or maybe you want to go on the elliptical. You want to start to do other things to replace those habits, right?
Yeah.
And then the next step, and this could probably be said to be at the start, but it has to go in order of some kind, is developing a recovery mindset, right? So this is super important because you have to be someone who believes in healing. You have to believe you're going to get better. And then you have to imagine yourself getting better, and you have to imagine yourself doing the movements you want to do. And there's plenty of science behind this. Athletes visualize all the time. Pianists can visualize how to play something. All right. So you can also visualize that.
Yeah.
And then once you have all those things, step eight is building trust in movement. And that's being done through regressing your movement and then progressing it. And then, step nine is creating a structured plan for sustainable recovery. Step 10 is awesome. I think it's the one that I'm so grateful to be doing right now, is to help others in their recovery, right? So this is kind of to the point you're talking about. Someone suffering alone, you're suffering alone. You can go into a Reddit group, a Facebook group, or whatever, just share your story. It goes so long, right? Tell the people what you've done, what worked for you, right? And you can still be in pain. You'd be like, oh, but you know what? I stopped swimming because swimming was hurting me, and people told me swimming was good, but it hurt me. So I stopped. I feel way better, right? This is a little piece of advice you can give to someone else that's just lower down on that staircase than you. that makes you feel good and it like helps you actually lean into recovery even more, right? And then step 11 is just to continue refining those strategies, everything that you've learned, lifestyle strategies, working out and training. And then the last step is to truly, start to live that inspired life, right? That back pain free life. Not to say that like you'll never have pain, but that the chronic pain that you once had is starting to dissipate and starting to, you're starting to feel some hope and some breath. And so, to summarize all that, if I was to give it to someone and summarize it, I would say the biggest thing that you need to do is you need to have a plan and you need to approach this um, in a way that it makes sense for you.
Yeah.
So don't just listen to generic advice. If, like I threw a few things out there, if walking for 30 minutes hurts you, you shouldn't be walking for 30 minutes, right?
Hmm.
If you can walk for 10, great, right? If people say swimming is good for you and swimming hurts and you're hurting more after swimming's not good for you, right? If people tell you go do yoga and everyone's saying yoga and you're doing a bunch of yoga and it's hurting you, it's probably not good for you,
Yeah.
right? And so it's really about developing a sustainable plan for you, right? So that you can live your life, but then also not continue to injure yourself. And when it comes to actually going through this by yourself, that's probably the hardest part. And so at the end of the day, I truly believe that people should go seek out professionals, physiotherapists, and other people, even though that is like this medical route. You need to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And for a huge amount of people, just seeing a physical therapist, it will help them. It will help you. It's sometimes it doesn't help everyone, right? And those people need further interventions, but start there. And then start by just assessing your life and doing an assessment of what's actually causing your pain levels, and then go from that point. So,
Perfect. Thank you very much for running through that. I know that will definitely help people, and they can actually take something away kind of tangible and start working on a process, which is always really handy. Um,
mhm.
the last thing I wanted to ask you, I've got a couple more minutes on this. So the last thing I just wanted to ask you was two things really. Firstly, where can people find you to, because I know you put a lot of free content out there on like social
Mhm.
media, you put a lot of movements out and things that can help. So where can people find you for a start? And then secondly, what's kind of next for you in your
Mhm.
plans?
Mhm. Yeah, so people can find me. I mean, the best place is Instagram. So my name Darcy Darcy, and it's Coss. It's Coss. You search that in Instagram, you'll find me. You can search that in YouTube as well. I've started to build quite a library on YouTube of trainings and protocols and things of that nature. So I would focus on those two areas if you want to really connect and see find some of my resources. Um, and what's next for me? I'm just continue doing the same thing I'm doing right now. I get to help people every single day, get their life back, um, and really just help guide people. And I'm so grateful for that. I mean, I can't, like I said, it's really cool that I'm even here talking to you. When I think back of, when I didn't have the skills to do this and to be able to be helping people now. So the goal for me is just to continue the process, keep helping people, um, and uh, and that's it. It's pretty straightforward. That's about it.
Well, you're doing a good job with it. I look at everything that you do and, I see all the comments that you get from people and, you can see that it's just naturally helping. I think one of the main things that really drew me to kind of want to speak to you is you remind me a little bit of yourself. You seem quite calm around everything and you look like you've gone through a journey. And some of the things that you've said definitely today and some of the things I looked on social media, it seems to be a journey that people just have to go through, but you've kind of come out of it the other end. And, like myself, it's kind of you get to a point where, okay, how can I actually help other people with this and what can we do? So, no, thank you. Thank you for coming on. I know it's probably a bit earlier over there than what it is here. So I appreciate you getting up and coming on this, today. And, yeah, thanks and good luck for the future and good luck for everything. We'll keep an eye out for everything else that you do.
Yeah, thank you, brother, and I appreciate you reaching out and sharing the message because I know you have your own story, and inspiring people is one of the most like human things we can do. Right? You help through inspiration, so keep that up.
Oh, cheers. Thanks, Darcy. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it.